And when he said that, I knew we had to go, you know. And the state faults me for not calling for help for the victims. No one could call for help from the victims. The phone cord was jerked out of the wall. And so, I mean...
A lot of people don't understand that, you know, phones actually used to work out of the wall.
Yeah, you know, yeah, now they don't. Now they just run on batteries. But there was a permanent phone jack in the wall. We had a cord that was about 45 foot long, and it was in the center of the hallway so that we could take the phone into any room in the house, because Twyla talked on the phone when she was in the bathtub or when she was in the bedroom folding clothes or whatever. And so when Scooter routed whoever out of the house that did this, I guess he was chasing them down the hallway. This phone cord was in a big long U shape pointing towards the front door. So I'm guessing that whoever he was chasing got his feet hung up in the cord and jerked it out of the wall on their way out the door, but nobody could call. The interesting thing is that the state says I chose to go to a neighbor's house wearing clothes that were soaked in the victim's blood. That's a lie. They were just droplets. There's no proof that it was the victim's blood. Only 2 contact stains were tested. And the state admitted at trial that proved only that my clothes came into contact with a victim or a surface upon which they deposited blood at a time after they were bloody, and that was perfectly consistent with my claim of actual innocence. And so, see, they overlook little things like that now and try to say, oh, 10 pieces of evidence, it was him, he done it, you know what I'm saying? The thing that they're not saying, you know, when you see something like this, if you're a thinking individual, the first thing you should think is, well, what about the murder weapons? His fingerprints are not on the murder weapons, somebody else's are. His blood's not on the murder weapons, somebody else's are. His blood's not on the victim, somebody else's is. His blood's not on the trash bag that was where one of the knives was found, somebody else's is. Somebody else's fingerprints is on it, but they don't say anything about that, you know? So, I mean...
Well, I think that's just one of those cases where they're not going to help them. And I don't want to say the other side, help the defense.
Well,
that's generally what
well,
discovery is all about.
do you believe that?
I believe about what?
If you're a district attorney, do you think you have an obligation to convict someone who's not guilty?
No.
Okay, so...
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
In
so...
fact, I've never talked to one who said that they did. As a matter of fact, their biggest thing is about seeing justice done, whether it's exonerating someone or putting them behind bars.
How many district attorneys have you ever seen exonerate somebody in the panhandle of Texas?
Not a lot.
Never. Not one.
I was going to say
Not one.
Jeff Blackburn's the only attorney I know.
But Jeff Blackburn's not a district attorney.
Right.
Jeff Blackburn works for the Innocence Project. I know Jeff. He's a personal friend of mine. So anyway, I've known him for a lot of years. I worked on the first case that he ever handled in the Panhandle, Lolly Hernandez. Do you remember that? In Pampa? I worked on that case. I worked for Rowdy Bowers in Pampa at that time. And so did John Mann.
Well, in the eyes of the state, I mean, when you look at all of the extenuating circumstances in this case, and in some of the, like you mentioned, it's different things without your DNA or your fingerprints on, like the axe handle. No fingerprints. That was even in your house. So
yes.
When you look at something like that, how is it? What is it that your lawyers are doing to get this reintroduced, or can they, or is it past that point?
No, they can get it reintroduced, but the state doesn't have any evidence that convicts me of anything. The only thing that the state used at trial to convict me were the lies of Andrea Reed and the fact that I was there. And I don't deny being there. It was my home. I had every right to be there. But they threatened her, and they told her that if she offered me aid or harbored me, knowing that the police were looking for me in a murder case, that they would put her in jail for the rest of her life, send her to prison for the rest of her life as an accessory after the fact, and take her kids away from her. Okay, she had a kid 9 and 11 years old at that time, and they were not her biological children. They were her sister's children she had abandoned them. Her sister was a drug addict. Anyway, but she raised them as her own, and she loved them as her own. And so they threatened her, and she said that in order to make it look like she was under duress. She didn't offer me any aid, you know what I mean? Like I made her do it, you know what I'm saying? So that way she was blameless, you know what I'm saying? She was under duress. And so that's why she lied, and she didn't realize later on that they were going to use that against me to try to say that I was guilty. And after she realized that, you know, after the trial, when the newspaper stories came out and everything, she realized that her lies were responsible for sending me to death row. And she has a conscience. She's a good woman. I've known her all my life, you know, all my adult life, since I was 20 years old. And when she realized what she did, she made it right. She went back and recanted her testimony and told the truth. Now, the judge refused to credit her recantation, but everything that she says is directly in line with the evidence in the case, okay? And her testimony is completely unrefuted in the record. Okay, I don't know if you know this or not, and the judge may not know it either, but in the state of Texas, if testimony is unrefuted and the factual elements are proven, the judge is required to credit it. Did you know that?
Really? I did not know that.
Yes, yes. So, you know, they threatened her with perjury, but they didn't prosecute her, so what does that tell you? You know what I mean? She must not have been lying, huh?
Well, that's something I was going to say. That's up to the jury to decide. I would say
The jury doesn't have anything to do with that.
if she recants, they can, after the fact, there's not much they can hear.
The jury didn't have anything to do with that. This was post-conviction after trial, and it's up to the state district attorney's office to prosecute her for perjury, not the jury.
Well, and I'm not trying to equate the two, but I know that new trials are possible. We just had another inmate who was in jail for sexual assault of a child, and he was released. Matter of fact, his conviction was overturned, thrown out for ineffectual counsel.
Ineffective assistance
And
of
then they came back
counsel.
and they looked at the evidence again, and a lot of people are asking the question, why can't the Skinner case do that? Because what will it take for the courts to do that?
It will take some DNA evidence proving that someone else committed this crime, not me.
And the third-party DNA evidence, are the Attorney General saying that's not good enough?
They're not saying anything. You read the advisory, they don't mention it at all.
Sure, all they mention is that it's, in the eyes of the state of Texas, you're a convicted killer.
Well, that sounds dramatic and it sounds wonderful, but it's not true. You know, I don't know what to say to you. I mean, I didn't do it, so what else can I say? I mean,
And I'm not asking you to explain that in any way. I'm just trying to get a feel for what you're having to go through. I mean, you were this close to, coming to the end of your life, and then in a matter of just a few minutes, it flipped on you. I mean, you went from one end to the other, and a lot of people are going to wonder, how does someone survive that, and then possibly have to go through that again?
yeah. Well, I mean, if I had a choice, I'd run to the hills. I don't want to be going through it, but I'm locked in a box, and I'm behind this glass, and I'm locked behind these gates and behind all this barbed wire, so I don't have any choice but to go through it, you know. Some people tell me that they think I'm very courageous to have survived what I have and to continue to defend myself and all that, but I just look at it like, if I don't do it, who would, you know? I mean, I didn't do it, so I don't, I should say something about it, shouldn't I? And as far as what I have to go through, it's been very hard. There have been moments, when I was at the bottom of the pit of despair. You know what I'm saying? I probably cried more tears over this than enough to float the Queen Mary. But it's not bringing anybody back, and it's not doing me any good. So I have to just try to keep going. You know what I'm saying? But the horrible thing about it to me is that, I love my girlfriend and her sons very much. They were like my own kids to me, but they were grown men, and so they were like friends to me, so I had like a dual relationship with them. I was a father figure to them, but I was also, their best friend. And so, I never got to mourn over that. The very next day, they were blaming it on me after it happened, and so, all these years, I sit here and think about them all the time. I miss my girlfriend. I loved her more than anything in this world, And so, I mean, yes, it's hard. It's very hard, but I'm not looking for any sympathy. I just want to put the truth out there. That's what I want. I want the world to know the truth. I want the world to know that Hank Skinner is not a murderer. That's what I want, and I'm not going to satisfy. I'm not going to stop until I get that. So, they may kill me, but that doesn't mean I'm guilty. It just means they say I am. In a way, I sort of understand their position because they're elected officials, and if they admit that they made a mistake, the public views everything as us and them. You're either one of us or you're one of them. If you're one of them, it's okay to kill you, but if you're one of us, hey man, what have you done? You know what I'm saying? So if this, look at how many exonerations there are in this state. You know what I'm saying? The state's got more exonerations under DNA than any state in the nation. So, I mean, people say that the system is broken. The system's not broken. it's open to manipulation by unscrupulous people who are under pressure and who will go ahead and convict somebody because they convince themselves, someone like me, I was a poor person. I made a good living, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, I didn't own a brick home. I wasn't a pillar of the community. I was just a regular old guy. And so they say to themselves, well, he's expendable anyways. It doesn't make any difference. He's a damn criminal. He's been convicted before. We go ahead and kill him. So what? I couldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't do that. But
You've I've read a recent article that you've, I don't want to say famous or infamous, you've outlived 400 people on death row. And the reason I can bring into this is the exonerations, is because you talk about the exonerations. 400 people since you've been on death row have been executed.
Yes.
Do you feel like that any one of them?
yes, I know several of them that were innocent and they killed them anyway. And one of those was Odell Barnes. One of them was my best friend, Todd Willingham. I know several people here, but it's more than that, Mr. Kelly. It's who decides what's going to make a case capital. A lot of these cases were made capital when really they weren't. The district attorney just wanted to, you know, make a big issue out of it, make his bones, and so he could get reelected. And then in his reelection campaign in the newspaper the next year, I sent so-and-so to death row who killed blah, 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 you know, so I'm working hard for the public, you know. You would be surprised at how many times that has happened. One notable example is right here out of Harris County was Robert West. He was a good friend of mine here. And he had a cross-dressing lover that he lived with. And he was accused of a murder where a woman was stabbed with a broken off pool cue. And he did it. She attacked him. She was a bull dyke and she attacked him and he killed her. Well, when the police recovered the body, they didn't find this necklace that her parents had given her, and her parents were distraught, of course, over her passing, and they wanted that necklace bad. And so the detective tells Robert West, Bobby, I'll move your gay lover in the cell with you, and you can stay together until you go to prison if you just sign this piece of paper saying that you took the necklace, because her parents are blaming it on us and saying we stole it. And he had no idea that made it capital, because then it was robbery and a commission of murder. They killed that man. He was guilty of murder. He wasn't guilty of capital murder. So I mean, you know, there's human hands in these things, and a lot of times innocent mistakes are made. I understand that, but a lot of times you have unscrupulous people who don't give a damn, and they only want what they want, and it's egos and personalities, and they want what they want, and so they will go to any extreme to get it. And there are people here who do not belong here. You better believe that. Yes, that's true. And I'm sure that I am not the only person here who's innocent. I'm sure that there are other people here who are innocent too. I would say probably as much as 10% may be innocent. And you know, the old cliches that everybody says they're innocent, they're framed, that's not true. They've killed 392 people since I've been here, and I was a paralegal in the world, and I'm still a paralegal, but I don't practice out in the world anymore, obviously, because I'm in here. But most of the guys want me to read their briefs and see what if they got any grip, if they're going to get a relief or whatever, and what I think about them. So I am cognizant, plus I get all the court's opinions out of the courts from the Fifth Circuit and the Federal District. So I'm cognizant of the facts of a lot of people's cases here. And there are a lot of cases here who are really screwed up, you know what I'm saying? And so, I mean,